You think becoming your best self is about motivation, about inspiration, about waiting for clarity or confidence to arrive like a gift. But that way of thinking is not just wrong, it's deadly because it keeps you passive. And passivity is how potential rots. Jim Rohn once said, "We must all suffer one of two things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret." You already know which one you're choosing. And if you're honest, the pain of regret is heavier than you expected, quieter, more corrosive. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up as distraction, as numbness, as the feeling that life is happening somewhere else, to someone else, and you're just watching. But there's a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. Becoming your best self is not a single transformation. It is a series of brutal, invisible decisions made when no one is watching and no applause is coming. And most people never make them, not because they can't, but because they refuse to see themselves clearly. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your standards. And right now, your standards are lying to you. The first step toward becoming your best self is not improvement. It is confrontation. You must confront the version of yourself you've been protecting, the excuses you've been defending, the identity you've been hiding behind. Most people confuse self-acceptance with self-respect. They say, "This is just how I am," as if personality were a prison sentence. But that phrase is often a shield, a way to avoid the discomfort of change. Machiavelli warned that people will do almost anything to preserve their image of themselves, even when that image is the very thing destroying them. You already know what you should be doing. That's the uncomfortable part. You don't need more information. You need more honesty, radical honesty. The kind that strips away the stories you tell yourself at night to sleep better. Look at your habits, not the ones you post about, the real ones, the private ones, the ones that define the trajectory of your life. Habits are not neutral behaviors. They are votes. Every habit you practice is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. And whether you like it or not, the votes are being counted every day. But here's what most people miss: habits are not the problem. Identity is. You don't fail because you lack discipline. You fail because you are loyal to a version of yourself that must die if you are to grow. And death, symbolic or real, has always been the price of transformation. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote not about becoming more, but about removing what is unnecessary, cutting away the excess, the weakness, the noise. Becoming your best self begins the moment you stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What must I eliminate?" But there's a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. Once you confront yourself honestly, the second step begins, and this is where most people retreat, because this step requires responsibility without resentment. You must accept that everything in your life, your income, your health, your relationships, your self-respect is either a result of your choices or your tolerance. Even what you didn't choose, you tolerated. And tolerance is a choice. This is not about blame. Blame is cheap. Responsibility is expensive. Responsibility costs you your excuses. It costs you your victimhood. It costs you the comfort of saying, "It's not my fault." Jim Rohn was ruthless about this. He believed that the day you fully accept responsibility for your life is the day you regain control over it. Before that, you are reacting. After that, you are designing. And design is everything. Look at nature. Nothing powerful is accidental. Storms follow laws. Mountains follow pressure. Even chaos is structure. But human beings love to live as if their lives are exceptions to the rule, as if results should come without alignment. You cannot live a distracted life and expect focused results. You cannot live a soft life and expect a strong character. You cannot betray your own word and expect self-trust to survive. Responsibility means this: no matter how unfair the situation, you are still the one who must respond. Not because life is fair, but because power belongs to those who respond intentionally. And here is where psychology gets dark. The human mind hates responsibility because responsibility kills fantasy. And fantasy is where most people live. Fantasy says, "One day I'll change." Responsibility says, "Change now or accept the consequences forever." Most people would rather live in the illusion of future greatness than face the discomfort of present discipline. That is why potential is so common and excellence so rare. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. Once you accept responsibility, the third step appears and is the most misunderstood of all self-discipline. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not suffering. Discipline is self-respect in action. The disciplined person is not someone who forces themselves to do what they hate. It is someone who has decided what they value more: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. One is immediate and controlled. The other is delayed and absolute. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your identity. Every time you break one, you fracture it. And identity is everything. You don't rise because of motivation. You rise because of who you believe you are. If you believe you are inconsistent, you will act inconsistently. If you believe you are weak, you will choose weakness. But if you believe, even quietly, that your word matters, your actions begin to align. This is why discipline feels heavy at first. You are rewriting your self-image. And the mind resists identity change more than physical pain. Ancient warriors understood this. They trained not to become strong, but to remove hesitation, because hesitation is the real enemy, not fear, not difficulty. Hesitation, your best self is not fearless. Your best self acts despite fear, but discipline has a secret most people never discover. It creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. Not the loud, performative confidence you see online, but the silent confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. And once you can rely on yourself, something dangerous happens. You stop needing validation. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. The fourth step is the one that separates those who grow quietly from those who stay stuck publicly. It is the step of environment and influence. You are not as independent as you think. Your thoughts are not fully yours. Your standards are borrowed. Your ambitions are shaped by what you tolerate around you. Show me your environment, and I will show you your future. People like to quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," but they treat it like a motivational poster, not a surgical warning, because acting on it requires distance, and distance requires discomfort. Machiavelli wrote that those who wish to rise must be willing to offend, not intentionally, but inevitably, because growth changes your pace. And when your pace changes, alignment breaks. If you remain in environments that reward weakness, you will weaken. If you remain in conversations that celebrate mediocrity, you will shrink. If you remain surrounded by people who fear growth, you will begin to fear it too. This is not arrogance. This is ecology. A plant does not hate the soil it outgrows. It simply grows anyway. Your best self cannot survive in the same mental and emotional conditions that created your current self. Something must change. Either your environment or your ambition will slowly suffocate. And here is the part no one tells you: loneliness is often a side effect of growth, not a failure of it. There will be moments when it feels like you are walking alone, like no one understands the new standards you're setting. That is not a sign to turn back. That is a sign you are ahead of your old life. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. The fifth step is not about achievement. It is about alignment. And this is where becoming your best self stops being about success and starts being about meaning. You can win and still feel empty. You can achieve and still feel lost. Many people do, because they built a life that looks impressive but feels foreign. Jim Rohn warned about this too. He believed success without values is the fastest path to misery, because if you climb the wrong mountain, every step upward takes you further from peace. Alignment means your actions, your values, and your long-term vision point in the same direction. It means you stop living reactively and start living deliberately. Ask yourself this uncomfortable question: if your life continues exactly as it is now, where will you be in 5 years? Not where you hope to be, where your habits are taking you. That future version of you is not imaginary. They are being built right now, through repetition, through tolerance, through neglect or intention. Your best self is not a fantasy. It is a direction, and direction matters more than speed. The Stoics believed that a good life was not one without struggle, but one with clarity, knowing what matters, knowing what doesn't, and having the courage to act accordingly. Becoming your best self is not about perfection. It is about coherence, about becoming someone whose inner world matches their outer actions, someone who doesn't need to lie to themselves to survive the day. And here's the final uncomfortable truth: the world does not need you to be comfortable. It needs you to be capable. Every generation is shaped by a small number of people who refuse to remain small. Not louder people, not luckier people, but people who took responsibility for their inner standards and refused to negotiate with weakness. You don't become your best self by waiting for the world to change. You become your best self by changing how you show up in it. So start small, but start today. Tighten one habit, raise one standard, keep one promise to yourself. That is how identity shifts. Quietly, relentlessly. And when you feel resistance, and you will, remember this: resistance is not a sign you are failing. It is a sign you are leaving familiar territory. You are not unfinished. You are undisciplined. And discipline, once chosen, changes everything. Because the moment you stop lying to yourself about who you are is the exact moment you begin becoming who you could have been all along. You think the story ends once you understand the steps. It doesn't. Understanding has never saved anyone. Execution has. Because here is the truth most motivational speeches avoid. Once you start becoming your best self, life does not get easier. It gets sharper, clearer, more demanding. The fog lifts, and suddenly you can no longer hide behind confusion. You see exactly where you're weak, exactly where you've been lazy, exactly where you've been lying to yourself. And that clarity can feel brutal. This is where most people quit, not because they can't continue, but because they can no longer pretend. You see, ignorance is comfortable. Awareness is heavy. Once you know, you are responsible. Once you see, you can't unsee. And your old habits begin to feel loud, embarrassing, almost childish. The late night scrawling, the empty conversations, the goals you talk about but never touch, they start to feel beneath you. And that discomfort is not punishment. It's growth rubbing against your old skin. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. As you rise, resistance doesn't just come from within. It comes from people, not enemies, not strangers, people you know, people you love, people who benefited from the old version of you. When you change, you disrupt unspoken agreements. You stop playing predictable roles. You stop being available for dysfunction. And without saying a word, you force others to confront their own stagnation. Most won't thank you for that. They will test you instead. They'll call you obsessed. They'll say you've changed as if change were betrayal. They'll joke about your discipline, mock your seriousness, downplay your goals, not because they hate you, but because your growth threatens the story they tell themselves about why they haven't grown. This is ancient psychology. Plato warned that those who leave the cave and return with truth are often attacked, not celebrated, because the truth burns eyes that have grown comfortable in darkness. Your task is not to convince them. Your task is to remain steady. Stoicism teaches this brutally well. You are not responsible for other people's reactions. You are responsible for your character. And character is forged when pressure meets principle. This is where most self-improvement content lies to you. It tells you becoming better will make you happier. But happiness is not the first reward. Strength is. Clarity is. Self-respect is. Happiness comes later quietly when you realize you are no longer at war with yourself. But there's a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. As you build discipline and alignment, something subtle happens to your perception of time. You begin to feel urgency, not panic, but gravity. You realize life is not short. It is precise. There is enough time to do what matters, but not enough time to do everything. This realization is terrifying and liberating at the same time. You stop chasing distractions disguised as opportunities. You stop saying yes to things that don't move you forward. You begin to understand that every yes is a hidden no to something else. And suddenly your calendar becomes a moral document. It reveals what you truly value, not what you claim to value. Jim Rohn used to say, either you run the day or the day runs you. And most people are being dragged by their days like prisoners, pulled by notifications, hijacked by moods, controlled by other people's expectations. Your best self does not live reactively. Your best self designs their days with intention. Not perfectly, but consciously. Morning routines are not productivity hacks. They are identity rituals. They are how you remind yourself who is in charge before the world makes its demands. And evenings are not for escape, they are for review, for quiet accountability, for asking, did I live today in alignment with who I say I want to become? Most people avoid this question because they already know the answer. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. Eventually, if you stay on this path long enough, you will face a moment of decision that no one prepares you for, a moment where comfort and growth directly oppose each other, where you cannot keep both. It might come as an opportunity that demands risk, a relationship that requires honesty, a habit that must be abandoned even though it numbs your pain. A truth that, once spoken, will change how people see you forever. This is the crossroads. Machiavelli believed that fortune favors the bold, but only when boldness is paired with preparation. This is not about reckless courage. This is about earned courage. The kind that comes from knowing you have trained for this moment, even if you didn't know its shape. Your past discipline becomes your confidence here. Not arrogance, not hope. Confidence grounded in evidence. You have kept promises to yourself before. You have done hard things before. You can do this too. And when you choose growth over comfort, something irreversible happens. You cross a psychological line. You realize you can survive discomfort. And once you know that, fear loses its leverage over you. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. On the other side of that line, you stop asking for permission. You stop waiting to be chosen. You stop hoping someone will notice your potential and unlock your life. You understand that no one is coming. And strangely, that realization doesn't make you bitter, it makes you free. Because if no one is coming to save you, then no one is stopping you either. This is where true independence begins. Not financial, psychological, emotional. You no longer need constant reassurance. You no longer need external validation to act. You trust your internal compass because you built it through discipline, responsibility, and alignment. You become dangerous in the quietest way possible. Not loud, not flashy, but consistent. And consistency is terrifying to a world addicted to novelty. The best version of you does not announce themselves. They arrive early. They do the work. They leave results behind. And here is the final loop. The truth that brings us back to where we began. You are not unfinished. That was never the problem. You were avoiding the weight of becoming who you said you wanted to be. You were postponing the responsibility of your own potential. You were confusing comfort with safety and distraction with rest. Becoming your best self is not about adding more to your life. It is about removing what weakens you, the lies, the excuses, the unnecessary suffering disguised as pleasure. And once you see that clearly, you can never go back, because the gap between who you are and who you could be will no longer poison you quietly. It will fuel you deliberately. You will wake up knowing the day is watching. You will move knowing your choices matter. You will rest knowing you earned it. And the next time that old voice whispers that you are unfinished, incomplete, not ready, you will smile because you finally understand the truth. You were never unfinished. You were just waiting for the courage to become exact.